Hey there. So I'm curious. Do you ever think of heaven? Do you have an image of heaven in your mind? Well, I ask because I do, but let me back up before I get into that. See, I didn't grow up in the United Church of Christ faith. I grew up what they call Southern Baptist, and where I have complete respect for every denomination out there. I don't ever want to belittle one or rank one over the other. I think everybody is entitled to worship the way they want to. But I can tell you, when I was young, the views I took out of that faith-filled community is that there is a hell and there is a heaven. And that hell is this lake of fire that people are thrown into to live all of eternity if they don't live right here on earth. And it sounded absolutely horrible. And then I was also introduced to the idea of heaven, a beautiful place. In my mind, they had the pearly gates and this gigantic judge type table where God sat at the top with this rule book that actually looked like, in my mind, a grade book my teachers might have had. And there would be check marks in this book as to whether or not I lived a good life. Like, did I lie too many times, or did I steal cookies or something in my head? And then God would decide on what was considered Judgment Day whether or not I was allowed to go into heaven or if I was thrown into this lake of fire. And I hated that. So because of that, because I wasn't the best kid, I guess I had convinced myself that all of my loved ones were going to go to heaven and live happily ever after, but I was going to be thrown into the lake of fire because God just probably didn't like me very much. And no one could tell me any different. So I kind of walked away from my relationship with that scary God. And then I became a member of the United Church of Christ, and not until I was an adult. And in this faith, I was introduced to people who loved me regardless of what I had done. And those people introduced me to a relationship with God that of a being. This God would love me regardless of the bad things I did, of the person that I was, and that I was always, through the gift of Jesus Christ, always going to be welcome into heaven. So that the good things I did on this earth were not to gain me entry into heaven. The good things I do on this earth are because they're just something that I want to do. What a completely different image I gained later in life than I had as a child. So when I became part of the United Church of Christ, I was more than ready to get rid of my images of hell, because we don't really talk about hell, let alone it being a punishment. So I was more than ready to throw away that. But on that same thing, we don't talk a lot about heaven, but it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I love to hear what people think heaven looks like. And I think we've all come up with our own images in our own minds. I hope people think about heaven, because I've said this before, so if you've ever been with me when I've talked about it, is I'm banking on there being a heaven. Because as people die, whether they're my family or my friends or my pets, I want to know that they are going someplace beautiful and going to wait for me there, and that one day we will all be together again. So I came up with a vision of heaven in my head. It's a my heaven is the perfect day, the perfect temperature, the perfect breeze, the perfect sky, the plush green grass that takes over everything with little spots of woods. My heaven has dog bowls because I am sure there are animals everywhere. So these dog bowls are full of water so no one ever goes thirsty. And then all of the people that I have ever known in my life will be there, and they will look exactly the way they did the last time I knew them. That way I will be sure to recognize them. And in my heaven, I find peace. That one day when I die, I will go there. So when this video is over, maybe in your group, why don't you talk about, one, if you've ever considered heaven. Two, do you really believe that it is obtainable by anyone? That's a good conversation because we don't really say that, although I think it's a belief. And then, give each other time to describe your heaven. See how they're the same. See how they might be different. Mess around with that in your head because that's another beautiful thing. I love that the United Church of Christ gives us a platform to do that in a safe and healthy way. So have some fun with this. Talk about heaven. Blessings to you. Thanks for coming today. Bye.